Folks, the cover-up regarding Gileain Maxwell gets deeper. The Trump regime's Bureau of Prisons just moved Gileain Maxwell from her prison cell in Tallahassee, Florida, to a minimum security prison in southeast Texas at a location called the Prison Camp Bryan in southeast.
Recently on Meet Us Touch, a jaw-dropping expose unraveled the suspicious transfer of Gileain Maxwell, connecting Trump's inner circle, immunity deals, and a shocking effort to erase Epstein links, with the network digging into criminal cover-ups, hypocrisy, and the powerful shielding each other. This episode spotlights explosive revelations and denied justice for survivors. Let's break this down together.
Texas, which is known for being minimum security, a highly sought after location if you're in prison. And I don't even believe that Gileain Maxwell was allowed to be transferred based upon her status as a convicted sex trafficker to even be able to go into this prison camp Bryan in Texas, which is a minimum security facility. It's almost like a summer camp. It's exactly where you want to be, but it's more for white collar crimes and things like that. This is obviously part of the deal that the Trump regime cut with Gileain Maxwell. We know last week they gave Gileain Maxwell something called Queen for the Day immunity, or use immunity, sometimes referred to as proffer immunity. You will recall that the Trump regime, Donald Trump, sent his number 2 at the DOJ, a guy by the name of Todd Blanche, who used to be Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer in the case where Donald Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts. Todd Blanche met with Gileain Maxwell for 2 days for about 10 hours. They granted Gileain Maxwell immunity from her statements, meaning she can't be prosecuted for anything that she said at that meeting with Todd Blanche. Now, in addition, Gileain Maxwell has been angling for a pardon or a commutation of her sentence. And many people believe that Donald Trump is preparing to give her a pardon or commutation, essentially if she lists the names of other people other than Donald Trump and tries to distract from Trump's involvement with Epstein. In other words, help Donald Trump with the cover-up, wink, wink, of his involvement, and maybe you'll get a pardon or a commutation. Well, they've already given her immunity, which I predicted they were going to. Go back months, I was predicting this. Go back years, I was predicting this. That's step one. They've now transferred her. I mean, think about it. She's outmaneuvering Donald Trump at every step of the way. They've now transferred her from the Tallahassee prison where she was complaining about those conditions, and they put her in the most idyllic place, a convicted sex trafficker. The worst sex trafficker like in the history is now being treated this way by the Trump regime, who's making deals with her.
This quote exposes the troubling reality: power shields the convicted. Despite her crimes, Maxwell receives unprecedented perks, showing how elite networks manipulate the system for their own.
They're treating Gileain Maxwell better than they treat Canada and the Prime Minister of Canada and the Canadian people. Like, let's be clear about that. Donald Trump sent the Department of Justice quicker to meet with Gileain Maxwell than Donald Trump sent the government and FEMA to go and help the people of Texas during the flash floods. I don't even think Donald Trump has sent people to help some of the people in this country in other areas as well. But what would you expect? I mean, Donald Trump is a sexual predator. Donald Trump has been found liable for sexual assault. Donald Trump is a felon when it comes to financial fraud. And in the business records case, Donald Trump is a bankrupter. And by the way, Donald Trump knew Gileain for decades and decades and decades. She was the link originally between Epstein and Donald Trump and introduced them. She would introduce young girls to Donald Trump. I mean, that was written about in the Sunday Mirror in 1997. So we know all about that. So now she gets this deal as a sex trafficking person, as someone who was convicted of that, to go into this camp. Elizabeth Holmes is there. Jennifer Shaw is there. It's a place like that. And what have we also learned as well? We learned that the FBI has removed Donald Trump's names from the Epstein files. So you know how Donald Trump and the regime appointed 1,000 FBI agents and DOJ lawyers to go through the Epstein files? It was never to release it. It was to get rid of Trump's name. And now we know that one of the whistleblowers who called the Trump regime out was told, if you don't resign immediately, we're going to fire you. A guy by the name of Michael Seidel, who worked at the records department at the FBI, said, why are we redacting Trump's name? And then they said, he was one of the leaders. You're fired or resign now. You pick. And he chose to resign. A massive cover-up in plain view is in the way, as Donald Trump earlier in the week on Air Force One said that, yeah, he was aware that Epstein stole little girls from Mar-a-Lago.
Here, the ongoing cover-up isn't just speculation, there are direct admissions. Trump acknowledges awareness while files are quietly altered, revealing a system actively hiding its deepest rot.
Donald Trump said, yeah, he stole them. He stole my help. And then the reporters were like, the little girls that he sex trafficked, like Virginia Giuffre, you're saying he stole them from you? And Donald Trump's like, yeah, he's like I think she worked at the spa. It was the best spa in the United States of America. Anyway, I'll get to that in a moment. Back to the FBI redactions. They removed Donald Trump's name from the Epstein files. We know back in May, Donald Trump's name was flagged for him, that you're all over the Epstein files, which we knew because the files that were released, Donald Trump's name is all over. And now Trump is saying it's all a hoax. He fired the Epstein prosecutor, Maureen Comey, and blamed her dad for inventing what Trump's called the Epstein hoax. So Maureen Comey has been fired. And then Trump sent his criminal defense lawyer to meet with Gileain Maxwell and to give her immunity. And now Gileain Maxwell's like, well, why would I talk to Congress unless Congress gives me immunity, unless Congress meets my demands? And she's making demands from Congress. And Congress is like, we ain't giving you immunity. What the hell are you talking about? Now, I want you to add this all up. They give her immunity. They move her to an ideal prison, minimum security, which as a sex trafficker, she should not be going to at all. That's not what minimum security prisons are for. They remove Donald Trump's names from the files. Okay. And a new CBS News investigation sheds light even more from the Wired report. Remember how Wired looked at all of the Epstein surveillance footage that released, and there was actually 2 minutes and 30 seconds that were manipulated? Well, a CBS forensic analysis and audit of the Epstein surveillance footage actually shows far more manipulation than even Wired reported. And by the way, if you look at the video and you watch the whole thing, at one point you can see a little mouse appear, not like an actual animal mouse, like a mouse to a computer, because it wasn't actually the footage. It was somebody recording a screen to begin with on a computer. But now a CBS News analysis of the video shows that it actually doesn't even provide the view of Epstein's cell block. You weren't even looking, that wasn't even Epstein's cell block in the video that was manipulated. Now, that actually makes sense if you go back to our prior reporting and what was reported contemporaneously, that the video's surveillance footage of Epstein's cell block was destroyed and deleted. Right? That's what we learned during the first Trump regime. So what was this surveillance even of? And it doesn't even appear to be showing the right angle of the cell block. It goes on to talk about how the CBS digitally reconstructed the special housing unit where Epstein was held using diagrams and descriptions from the 2023 report. And the CBS News review found the video does little to provide evidence to support the claims that were later made by federal officials. Additionally, CBS News identified multiple inconsistencies between the report and video that raised serious questions about the accuracy of witness statements and thoroughness of the government's investigation. Okay, let's hear from the victim's lawyer right now. Here he is, Spencer Kuvin. Here's what he's got to say. Let's play this clip right here. Let's play it.
She's an evil person. At its core, there is nothing other than just evil in this woman. She is the one that was actively out recruiting young girls to bring them to Epstein. And I've said this before, but without Gileain Maxwell, there would have been no Jeffrey Epstein. You know, you have an elderly or older gentleman, white hair. He's not going to convince young 14 and 15-year-old girls to come to his home for doing what he did. But if you have an educated, well-dressed, English accented woman approaching these young girls and promising them that they could be models and they're beautiful, their guard is down. So, she is more guilty, if not just as certainly guilty as Epstein. So the idea of giving her any kind of immunity at all is just repugnant to the victims.
This quote drives home the moral cost. Legal maneuvers shield the powerful, but re-traumatize those finally seeking justice. Immunity for Maxwell in exchange for silence is a slap in the face to survivors.
And here he is again. Let's play this clip right here as he talks more about Donald Trump talking about Virginia Giuffre and these little girls being stolen from Mar-a-Lago, and then they were sex trafficked. Here, play this clip.
President say that, Spencer. What questions does that bring up for you?
Well, I can tell you one thing. First of all, in cross-examining people for 30 years, okay, I can tell you that he didn't want to answer that question. Notice that when he's first asked about it, he says, I don't know. And then he realizes his brain starts working and thinking through it, thinking they're going to be able to figure this out, and I don't want to look stupid, so I better tell them. And then he amends his answer later. That happens when someone's trying to hide the truth. That happens when I cross-examine people. And you just have to keep pushing like that reporter did. We know that Virginia worked at the spa, and she was one of the ones that Epstein used in his sex trafficking scheme, that he traded her to various different high-profile individuals around the world. That has never been publicly admitted before. And she had to fight during her litigation because they were claiming that she was lying about all of that. We now know from the words of the president himself that Virginia was right all along, and that she was trafficked out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, the late Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide, we should mention, as a number of victims of Jeffrey Epstein have. Spencer Kuven, thank you so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, as usual.
Here's Virginia's Giuffre's brother. Virginia Giuffre recently died by suicide. She worked as an underage girl for Donald Trump in the spa. She was a towel girl. She was homeless, got a job around 16 years old. Epstein showed up, took her from Mar-a-Lago, went to Mar-a-Lago and saw her there actually and said, hey, I see you're working with Donald. I'm his friend. You want to work with me too? And then sex trafficked her. Here's what Virginia Giuffre's brother says. Here, play this clip.
She wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon at his property, at President Trump's property. And I think it's very important that we don't treat it like stolen. Seems very impersonal. It feels very much like an object. And these survivors are not objects. Women are not objects. What goes through my mind is that it's time to protect survivors, and it's time to protect the young women and our future generation of young women. So no, she wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon. And it certainly makes you kind of ask the question, how much he knew during that time, right? Even a couple of years later, even after he, I believe he had stated something along the lines of cutting off communication or kicking him out. He described Jeffrey Epstein as somebody who really enjoyed being around young women. And so she was preyed upon. She wasn't stolen. That's a predator that came and took her and did absolutely horrible things to her and so many other women out there.
Oh, and by the way, yesterday, Donald Trump announced an initiative for children involving sports and fitness. And guess who he has leading it? Oh, yes, if you guessed Lawrence Taylor, a rapist, someone who raped a 16-year-old girl and pled guilty. Yes, that is who Donald Trump has leading the initiative. Donald Trump picked a literal sexual predator, someone who pled guilty for sexually assaulting a 16-year-old girl, Lawrence Taylor, former athlete, to now be in charge of the kids. Just so you all remember, here's what Donald Trump said on the plane about Virginia Giuffre and Epstein stealing Trump's property, because Trump considers these little girls to be his property. Here, play this clip.
Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them young women? Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad, but that story's been pretty well out there, and the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young
Yeah.
women. What What did they do?
In the spa.
Jobs in the spa.
Yeah, it's people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
This tangled web around Gileain Maxwell and Donald Trump demonstrates how wealth, connection, and political clout work over time to suppress the ugly truth. As cover-ups multiply, immunity is used as a bargaining chip, and survivors' stories get sidelined a real look at systems built to protect power over people. What's your take? Is accountability even possible at this level? Or does justice always get bought off? Drop your take below and share the truth.